In the previous episode, we stood in the marble halls of ancient China, watching Jing Kai lunge at King Zheng with a hidden dagger, a failed assassination that gave birth to an empire. Welcome to the red pages of history, where power is fragile and every moment can be the last. Now, we travel back to December 27th, 2007. The city is Rawalpindi. The air is thick with chants, flags, and hope. And standing atop a bulletproof Toyota, waving to thousands, is Benazir Bhutto, the first woman to lead a Muslim nation, the daughter of a hanged prime minister, and the face of Pakistan's fragile democracy. She had returned from exile. She had defied death threats. She had promised change. But in the crowd, two boys, just 15 years old, were waiting. One held a pistol, the other wore a vest packed with explosives, and when Benazir raised her head through the sunroof to greet her people, they struck. A gunshot, a blast, and silence. This is the story of a woman who dared to challenge the military, the extremists, and the ghosts of her father's legacy. This is the assassination that shattered Pakistan's future and left behind a trail of grief, suspicion, and unanswered questions. She was born into power. Benazir Bhutto, born on June 21, 1953, in Karachi, Pakistan, was the eldest daughter of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the charismatic founder of the Pakistan People's Party, PPP, and later Prime Minister of Pakistan. Her mother, Begum Nusrat Isfahani, came from Iranian Kurdish descent, adding layers of cultural richness to Benazir's identity. From childhood, Benazir was surrounded by politics, diplomacy, and danger. She attended elite schools in Pakistan, then moved abroad, first to Harvard University, where she graduated with honors in comparative government, and then to Oxford, where she studied philosophy, politics, and economics. She became president of the Oxford Union, a rare achievement for a woman from a Muslim-majority country. But her education was not a retreat. It was preparation. In 1977, her father was overthrown in a military coup led by General Zia-ul-Haq. In 1979, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was executed. Benazir, just 26, was thrust into the center of Pakistan's political storm. She took up her father's mantle, becoming the face of the Movement for the Restoration of Democracy, MRD. She was imprisoned multiple times, kept in solitary confinement, and eventually exiled to London. But she never stopped speaking, never stopped organizing, never stopped believing. In 1986, she returned to Pakistan to a hero's welcome. Millions flooded the streets. 2 years later, she made history. Benazir Bhutto became the first woman to lead a Muslim-majority country, elected Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1988. She was just 35 years old. Her first term was short-lived, dismissed in 1990 over allegations of corruption and tension with the military. But she returned in 1993, winning again. Her second term focused on privatization, women's rights, and education, but was again cut short in 1996 amid political instability and the assassination of her brother Murtaza Bhutto. Her husband, Asif Ali Zardari, was accused of corruption. Her government was dismissed. And once again, Benazir went into self-exile, living between Dubai and London for nearly a decade. But she was not done. In 2007, after negotiations brokered by the United States with President Pervez Musharraf, Benazir returned to Pakistan to run in the 2008 elections. Her platform was bold: civilian control over the military, resistance to rising Islamist extremism, restoration of democratic institutions. She knew the risks. She had already survived a suicide bombing in Karachi just weeks after her return. But she refused to back down. Benazir Bhutto was not just a politician. She was a symbol of courage, of defiance, of possibility. She was called the Iron Lady of Pakistan, a title earned not by rhetoric, but by resilience. Pakistan, 2007. The country was on edge. President Pervez Musharraf, a military ruler who had seized power in a coup, had just been re-elected, but not through a popular vote. The judiciary was under siege, the media was censored, and the streets were boiling with unrest. Islamist extremism was rising. The Taliban had begun spilling over from Afghanistan into Pakistan's tribal regions. Suicide bombings were becoming routine. And in the middle of it all, Benazir Bhutto, the exiled former prime minister, announced her return. Her return was dramatic. Within hours of landing in Karachi, her convoy was bombed. 140 people died. She survived, and she kept going. Benazir knew she was a target. She wrote emails warning that if she was killed, Musharraf's government should be held responsible. But she refused to hide. She campaigned publicly, spoke boldly, and drew massive crowds. And then came December 27, 2007. The rally in Rawalpindi was electric. Thousands had gathered. Flags waved, drums pounded. Benazir stood tall in her armored Toyota Land Cruiser, surrounded by supporters, journalists, and security. She had just finished her speech. The crowd was chanting her name. She smiled. She stood up through the sunroof to wave one last time. Then, chaos. A young man pushed through the crowd. He raised a pistol, fired 3 shots. One bullet struck Benazir in the neck. Another hit her shoulder. She collapsed into the vehicle. Seconds later, a massive explosion. The attacker had detonated a suicide vest. 24 people were killed instantly. Smoke, screams, blood. The crowd scattered in panic. Her driver sped toward the hospital, but it was too late. At 6:16 p.m., Benazir Bhutto was pronounced dead. The news spread like wildfire. Riots erupted across Pakistan. Banks were burned, trains were torched, and the dream of a democratic revival was buried with her. Benazir Bhutto's assassination wasn't just a political killing. It was a message. From the shadows of extremism, from the corridors of unchecked power, from a nation torn between past and future. She died waving to her people. She died believing in change, and she died knowing the risks. But she never looked away. Benazir Bhutto's assassination sent shockwaves far beyond Pakistan's borders. World leaders condemned the killing. The United Nations called it an attack on democracy. India declared a day of silence. And in Washington, flags were lowered to half-mast. But inside Pakistan, grief turned to rage. Cities burned, banks were looted, trains were set ablaze, and the streets echoed with one question: who killed Benazir? The government blamed the Taliban. The Taliban denied it. Others pointed fingers at the intelligence services, at Musharraf himself, at forces that feared her return. The truth was buried beneath layers of politics, propaganda, and silence. Her funeral was held in Garhi Khuda Bakhsh, beside her father's grave. Millions watched, thousands wept, and her final resting place became a shrine, not just to a leader, but to a dream. Benazir Bhutto was not perfect. She was accused of corruption. She made political compromises, but she was brave. She stood tall in the face of death. She believed in a Pakistan that could rise above its past, and for that, she paid the ultimate price. Her death marked the end of an era and the beginning of a darker one. Because when a voice like hers is silenced, what remains is not just silence, but fear. If this story moved you, subscribe to the Red Pages of History and join us as we uncover the moments where courage meets consequence and where every bullet leaves behind a legacy. Because history doesn't just remember the victors, it remembers the ones who dared.